They strapped 10 buoyancy balls to the Titanic. They successfully brought it back up to the surface. Once they entered the ship, they ignored all the gold and jewels. Instead, they headed straight to the captain's quarters. They grabbed a wooden box from inside. When they opened it, they found an oil painting. This was exactly what they had come for. Just as the two were toasting in celebration, a helicopter appeared in the sky. Several heavily armed men descended from it. The two were about to make their escape when they ran straight into the enemies. The enemies raised their weapons in threat, demanding that the two hand over the painting. To everyone's surprise, the man smiled and agreed, but the next second, the battle erupted. The man manipulated the bullets fired by his enemies, taking out every guard on the deck. Even their helicopter didn't escape unscathed. But just then, a stray bullet accidentally burst one of the buoyancy balls. The floating ship lost its balance and began sinking toward the ocean floor. The two quickly took down the remaining enemies and rushed toward the cabin. But by then, a massive wave had already crashed in, slamming both of them back onto the ship. In the chaos, the woman grabbed onto an iron door. But when she looked back, she saw the man's foot tangled in a net, his whole body being dragged into the depths along with the ship. The woman immediately dove underwater to help him break free. By this point, the ship had completely submerged. Fortunately, the two managed to escape with the painting in hand. They boarded a yacht and made it back to shore. This priceless antique, worth tens of millions, was finally in their hands. But the real treasure hunt was only just beginning. It turned out the painting was part of a series of 6. Each one had a mysterious character hidden on its back. Once all 6 characters were found, they could lead the way to the legendary Fountain of Youth. Now they had finally obtained the 6th painting. They could finally piece all the characters together. But after running countless calculations, the supercomputer still couldn't arrange the letters into any meaningful answer. 2 whole days passed without any progress. Just when everyone was at a loss, the son, who was studying music, had a sudden flash of inspiration. He suggested that the characters might not be letters at all, but rather different musical notes. He played a melody using these notes. The old black guy quickly used a song recognition program on the computer and discovered it was an extremely ancient piece of music, composed in commemoration of the 7 wonders of the world. They marked the 7 wonders on a map, and the locations matched up perfectly with the characters on the paintings. The only spot not covered by any character was the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The group immediately boarded a plane and set off on their journey to the pyramids. All the expenses for the team were covered by the blonde guy. Since he had been diagnosed with cancer, he had spent his entire fortune hiring this crew to find the Fountain of Youth. They even brought along the latest thermal imaging 3D scanning technology. Beneath one of the pyramids, they successfully discovered an enormous hidden chamber. This was the first time in history anyone had scanned the pyramids this way. That undiscovered chamber likely held the legendary Fountain of Youth. The group made their way to the base of the pyramid and began the excavation. Sure enough, behind one of the walls, they discovered a secret passage. Following the passage downward, the group arrived at a chamber. According to the inscriptions on the wall, moving the massive stone would reveal a hidden door. But no matter what they tried, they couldn't budge the stone. Even hammering it had no effect. The blonde guy had had enough. He ordered his men to bring out explosives, deciding to just blow the thing open. The woman was horrified. She quickly tried to stop him. Setting off explosives this deep underground could bury everyone alive. While the two were arguing, the boy accidentally discovered that several bricks on the side could actually produce musical tones when struck. So he tried playing that same melody. The next moment, the massive stone began to tremble, in rhythm with the music. The entire chamber started to shake. When the shaking stopped, the sand on the boulder began to mysteriously float into the air. With just a gentle push from the woman, the 1,000-pound boulder slid right out of the way. It turned out the vibrations just now had altered the gravity within the entire tomb. The hidden chamber had been successfully opened. But once they got down, they discovered a cliff lay ahead. How to descend such a height became the problem. The man looked down and noticed a strange pattern. He turned a button and unexpectedly opened a skylight above. As light streamed in, the cliff's mechanism was successfully activated. Bricks hidden within the walls. Who would have thought drinking from the Fountain of Youth could come with side effects? The blonde man demanded that the male lead go in and take a sip first, but facing unknown danger, the man refused. The blonde drew his pistol and fired at the man's arm. Now he had no choice but to drink the spring water to save himself, or else he would die from blood loss. He walked up to the spring and placed his hand into the water. The instant he made contact, spring water began seeping continuously from the cracks in the stone. When the blood from his arm dripped into the water, the spring seemed to come alive, swirling around him and beginning to heal the wound on his hand. Suddenly, a surge of electricity coursed through his body. He lost consciousness, his entire body floating in midair. When he came to, his reflection in the spring showed a face 10 years younger. At the same time, the so-called curse revealed itself. The bodies of his wife and son rapidly aged, reducing to a pile of white bones. Only then did the man realize that the price of immortality was the lives of those he loved most. But for the man, losing his loved ones made immortality meaningless. He decisively abandoned the spring, allowing allowing it only to heal his arm. Seeing the spring's healing power, the blonde fired more bullets at the man's body. After several shots, his body was riddled with holes. Miraculously, the spring could even heal these fatal wounds. The blonde was overjoyed. He drove the man away from the spring, stepped forward himself, and sliced open his palm with a knife. After his blood dripped into the spring, it healed just as expected. Faced with a fountain of eternal youth, the blonde drank straight from it. In an instant, he became a decade younger. But moments later, his body rapidly aged again, turning him into a white-haired old man. It turned out the person the blonde loved most was himself. Under that overwhelming force, the blonde perished on the spot. The entire pyramid began to collapse. The mechanism's exit started sealing shut. Everyone fled toward the exit. The blonde's bodyguard accidentally lost his footing and plunged into the bottomless abyss. The others successfully escaped the chamber. Though the fountain of youth was buried underground forever, their loved ones were still by their side.